Stand tall, walk free. Can you tell me about the gym?
What do you want to know about it?
About the Cola Darts.
All I know is that he had business partners that he owned the gym with, and it used to belong to Gertrude Carl. My husband was executor to Gertrude Carl.
And can you tell me a little bit about what your husband said? One of the names was Barney.
I don't remember. He told me, but I don't remember who it was.
You told me that.
I know there was a John Barney that was involved with real estate, and he had a son that was involved with cocaine deals.
Mm-hmm.
That I know. I don't know if he's connected to the gym or not.
Okay, so getting back to the gym, you were also telling me that the Alameda Police Department likes to work in the gym, right?
Yes.
And the Coladars is John Coladart, right?
Yes.
And Carol Coladart. And we were also talking about the Coladarts, about that she works also in the museum, the Alameda Museum, right?
Yes.
And she lives in Alameda, but she declines to let the audience know about that because she just wants to keep her name anonymous. But the fact of the matter is the Coladarts are very bad people. And isn't it true that Carol Coladart was running for something in the city?
She was running for mayor.
Do you remember about when? A couple of years ago, right?
I thought it was 96, but I don't remember exactly when.
And what was that had to do with who? With the estate of who?
Of Gertrude Carl.
Okay. So ended up her property ended up with the Coladarts, right?
Yes.
And so it was very suspicious how they ended up with the property.
John Coladart, from my understanding, he sold the house to Gertrude Carl, and they different people owned it. They kept selling it to different people, and eventually it had to do with Carol Coladart was the real estate agent, and she had something to do with selling the house, and a school, the Montessori school, it turned out ended up getting that
from
house.
Gertrude Carl's properties, right?
Yes, and the Catholic Church has also sold property to the Montessori school.
Okay, that has to do with Lance Russell. What did he say to your husband to get him out of the will? Could you tell the audience what he said about Gertrude Carl's nursing home?
He went to Gertrude Carl's nursing home and demanded her to take Bob out of the will.
Okay, because you know he was up to nothing but trouble. It had to do with nothing but trouble.
Yes.
And let's go back to your husband on May 11, 1998, when the police chase happened with Pat Wyatt, Officer Pat Wyatt, Alameda Police Department. You believe there might have been a dog, a canine?
Yes.
You said you had a picture?
I have a picture of Pat Wyatt with a police dog in the police car.
So tell the audience what you think might have happened that day.
I think he used the dog to attack my husband, and then he and the dog ended up killing my husband.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense what you're talking about on police brutality. Because just to think about it, this man is very brutal to begin with. And in 2012, he beat up this disabled Filipino man for no apparent reason.
Yes.
When the city ended up paying $450,000.
Yes, he almost died, the man, I heard.
Yes. And then he was, you know, the city decided to pay them $450,000 for them not to go to court. In that time, you had a lawsuit against the city of Alameda, Pat Wyatt, right?
Yes.
And tell the audience what happened.
He never showed up for court.
So you ended up dismissing the case without prejudice. So that means that you can reopen it if you decide to. And there's a case in the Alameda Courthouse at 1225 Fallen Street with the name of Pat Wyatt, Officer Pat Wyatt with the Alameda Police Department. This is nothing but abuse.
Right.
With the city of Alameda.
Exactly.
And one thing that I'm concerned about, the Tom Barney, in my case, that might have had something to do with the relative in the gym, one of the Barneys. It seems like there's a connection of real estate fraud going on.
Yes.
And Tom Barney, you know, what happened to me on December 16, 1990, when I was beaten up by Officer Quintero, and their relative owns the Acapulco. At the time, Tom Barney wrote up chumped up charges about me. So there's a connection right there, you know.
And John Barney's name is on a deed to the Mexican restaurant La Piñata. He owns that restaurant. He's one of the owners.
Well, it deals with a lot of real estate, and the Quinteros have a lot to do with it. So I believe the Quinteros from the Acapulco at the time, they sold the businesses, but at the time I think they had a lot to do with police misconduct, because at the time, Bernie Matthew, the chief of police, that was very dirty, and he had problems, he gave that order for them to come to my apartment.
Yes, and he gave the order to have my husband killed. Because the neighbors, I overheard them say the chief ordered it. And that was like 2 or 3 days before my husband was killed.
On May 11, 1998, right?
Yes.
So there's a connection of fraud here. And I also believe that the Caicos have a lot to do with drugs.
Yes.
Because remember what your husband said, that there was a phone call?
Yes.
Tell the audience what he said.
He overheard the phone calls coming in where they kept him when they kidnapped him, and they were mentioning the time of when the drugs were going to be delivered to the Port of Oakland. It was the Port of Oakland where
Airport,
the drugs
right?
were coming in.
Now, not too long ago, a few years ago, I heard that there was cocaine being imported here in this county, and it was anonymous, and the person said that they were also importing cocaine from the ships. So we're also talking about also the airport. So I believe it might have been coming from Colombia.
Right.
The cartels from Colombia, and they are shipping it out. So this is really big. So John Caicos, you said, is deceased now, right?
Yes.
But George Caicos is still alive, right?
Yes.
And Larry Caicos is still alive, right?
Yes.
And Helen Caicos is still alive.
Yes.
And who was the other Caicos?
There was another son, but I don't remember his name.
What about the wife of the other Larry Caicos?
Helen Caicos.
Helen Caicos, but there was another wife.
No, there was Francine and Helen Caicos.
Okay, Francine. These Caicos are very much into criminal activities as far as, you know, importing drugs into the United States, and they're still here. Tell the audience how the Caicos got to America.
They came, John Caicos and his brother George Caicos came here illegally from Greece on a boat.
And their intention was to do what? Organized crime, right?
Organized crime, yes.
So right now we're having a drug war in the United States, and it needs to be cracked down. But the police department is doing absolutely nothing, okay? And then the results of this, because your husband was trying to be a good man and resolve all this, what ended up happening to Robert Davis?
They ended up killing him, the police.
He was just about ready to crack the case.
I know it's more than the police. I think it was a cartel. Because it was only one leg I could identify. He only had one leg when I buried him.
So it was a really big drug ordeal going on. As you know, when Obama was president, he opened up the borders.
Yes.
And he allowed undocumented workers to get residency in the United States. What do you think about that?
I think it's horrible.
He opened the doors, like saying, come in.
Yes.
So now what President Trump wants to do, he wants to build a wall, and he wants to stop this, and he says he wants to stop the terrorists and the drugs from coming in to the United States. But people are against him, and they're fighting and saying that he is racist. Do you think Donald Trump is racist?
No.
Why?
Not at all. He's just for Border Patrol. And that's what every president should have stood behind that, protecting the borders. And he's the first one that's actually doing something about it.
You know, right now, marijuana is legal in California, and Jerry Brown signed to legalize marijuana. What do you think about that?
I don't care for Jerry Brown. I don't agree with him at all.
But everybody's saying it's for medical purposes.
He's for the foreigners coming in here, the illegals.
They're saying for medical purposes, but don't you think it's getting out of hand now that he's legalizing it everywhere, that you could smoke it whether you have medical cards or not? What do you think about that?
No, I don't agree.
He's allowing the cartel to open the borders to come to the United States and California and to let the drugs pour in.
Yeah. Yeah, he's our enemy.
So what's happening, we're having a problem here in California. Everybody's going to start smoking pot everywhere.
Yes.
And it's like going to be up in smoke. Do you think this is right for California to be a free town, to allow marijuana to be just legalized anywhere, whether you have medical problems or not?
Right. No.
It seems like they have an open thing for the people in the cartel industry.
Yes.
So we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
Stand tall, walk free.